But that being said, I also do not like the attitude where people say like, oh, why don't you just use a smaller word for that? It's like, why don't you use a bigger brain? I don't care. I do not care how that clip comes off. Hello, welcome to Bad Analogies, where we're connecting the greatest ideas to the simplest of minds. Let's get started. My name is Alex Mishwork. I want to just talk a little bit about the idea of slang. Is it good? Is it bad? This is going to be very much so a what are your thoughts kind of video. First, before we get into slang, I just think there's a few things that I want to cover and just sort of share some of my thoughts on. First, abbreviations. Second, slang in general. And third, acronyms. First, abbreviations. I am very, very partial to abbreviations. I think that abbreviations are, generally speaking, anything in the realm of a routine communication. My personal philosophy is if you're saying, hey, pass me the fruit salad, right? If you're saying, hey, pass me the fruit salad, what are you really doing? Right? You could just say that was a purely transactional situation. I'm across the table. You have said fruit salad. I would like the fruit salad to be over here. I bet there are some people out there who are like, just say what you mean what you say. Just there doesn't need to be, just let me pass it and move on. That being said, if it's something like, hey, do you have a stapler? You know what I mean? It's just a cubicle away. You're just reaching for the stapler. I think that there's a place for abbreviations. I find abbreviations to be a nice way to, spice up what's already going to be a totally transactional communication. Do you see? You already know where I'm going to go. So why not add a little bit of flair, a little pizzazz, a little bit of surprise? Pass me the fruit salad. You could say, I did not prepare this abbreviation. I don't even know how to abbreviate fruit salad. But, hey, you know what I mean? Can you pass me the stape? What was I abbreviating the other day? Me and my wife have started using Notion to create like an inventory of like household things. It's just a software, it's just an app online. But instead of saying, hey, like, did you add it to Notion? It'd be like, hey, did you add it to Notion? Because we already know what we're going to be saying here. But some people don't like abbreviation. They don't like to abbreviate things. I think it can be fun, especially in a situation to where this is not like a high level communication. This is not a speech. This is not a mission critical, team building way of communicating. It's really just a way of yeah, I would say adding surprise to an already totally understood sentence. That goes without saying. Where it gets really crazy is I think about Tom Haverford and Parks and Recreation on this one. But where it gets really crazy is when you start using substitutes that are linked, like word association, with abbreviated words. So for instance, if you're going grocery shopping, I've been recently calling, when you get home and you have all the groceries, you got all the grocery bags and you got to bring them all in. I might ask my wife, say, hey, can you help me with the nasties? And she's like, what? I'm like, the nasties. She's like, what? It's like the groceries, right? We all know the groceries. The groceries, abbreviated, grosh, right? Grosh, gross, nasty, plural, nasties. Helping me out with the nasties, right? Just another word for groceries. Everyone should understand that. That should be obvious. I could say, can you help me with the groceries, right? But instead, you can make it really laborious and difficult and frustrating. But once you get through that, you can totally rename things. You can just basically make up your own vocabulary for all kinds of things. Tom Haverford calls forks food rakes. He calls cakes big old cookies. So anyways, abbreviations probably the degradation of language. So let's move on to the next one. Number 2, slang in general. Slang is an interesting thing because some people say like, oh, slang is really bad. Think about it. Kids these days are saying, oh man, Jimmy John sandwiches are bussin'. Man, what's really funny is to use like proper pronunciation for words that are abbreviated with a little apostrophe. So it's like, these sandwiches are bussing, yo. That's pretty funny. No cap. That makes the kids really annoyed. Did you catch that? Cap is, I don't even know what cap means. And I'm not even trying to be like the millennial who's now turning into the boomer who's like, oh, I don't know what these mean anymore. I'm just being honest. Like, I don't think I know how to use. I think it means like, I'm not lying. I think that's what it means. One of the most fun uses of slang ever is not to actually use slang unironically. Using slang is a great opportunity to make young people cringe. If you've got someone in the age range of 7th grade to high school and you drop a, oh man, this food is bussin', yo. If you use that, oh my gosh, their skin will crawl. At the same time, they will look at you like you are someone from, in the Cold War era, a Russian in your, like, you're in the FBI, you're in a hotel room, you are spying on Moskolnikov, you know what I mean? And you're in the other room, and the guy in the CIA FBI seat next to you turns and looks at you and points a gun at you and starts speaking Russian. That is how these kids will look at you. It's like you have secret information and you've turned on them and they don't know how. They're like, wait a second, you're not supposed to know that language. Why are you speaking Russian? And why are you speaking it to me? Do you know that I'm Russian? So you drop a, man, this is bussin'. Or if you just say, wow, you just say, wow, like no cap, fam. Oh man, my younger brother taught me this one recently. He's 18. He teaches me all the awesome slang. That way I can just drop it and make the youths, the street youths cringe. And they're in amaze too. They're in awe of you. They're like, wow, oh my gosh. But it's also kind of like disappointing. It's kind of like seeing like a 55-year-old man wear like jeans with intentional rips in them and like a paisley pattern shirt with like a dragon on one side of it, and spiked hair. It's like, you're 55, dress your age. Slang is also similar. Young people see you speaking slang and they hear you and they're kind of like, oh my gosh, like, oh, are you a 30-year-old woman wearing a choker necklace from the early 2000s? Like, oh. It's off-putting to them, but they respect it. They respect that you're the guts and you staying current, you know what I mean, just to make the joke. But yeah, my younger brother taught me a new phrase, and it's mid, and basically means mediocre, mid-level, not the best. It's mediocre. Love it. I'm a huge fan of this word. I actually unironically like it. It's very mid. Teach that to my niece. I teach that to my, or at least my brother teaches it to me. My niece is nearby, and I just start using it for everything. Well, I asked my niece what she thought of something, and she had overheard it. She goes, kind of mid. Immediately picks it up. She's like 7. Slang is powerful. It catches on ironically, then it becomes post-ironic, and people are using it because that's the first thing they think of when they see something that's mediocre. It can be very powerful, and I do think in that sense you do have to be careful about what kinds of things you slangify. But here's the deal. The biggest critics of slang, oh, these kids shouldn't be, oh, it's the loss of civilization. Well, as people criticize slang, oh, I hate slang. Well, slang, in case you didn't know, just is slang for shortened language. Slang, short language. I mean, what do you do with that? I don't like slang, but I don't know how to say that without using it. Got him. Number 3 is acronyms in general. And acronyms in corporate America, definitely, I feel like acronyms are very, I don't know if they're modern development, but I do think that acronyms are my least favorite form of abbreviation. If you follow the progression here, abbreviations, shortening things, and then slang in general, shortened language, these to me, I like them still because they're in the realm of analogy, right? Nasties are just sort of a really loose affiliation with groceries, right? And you might, look, you make your own up. If you don't like it, whatever. Food rakes. But then slang in general, that's really what it is derivatives or alternates. They're alternate part numbers for words, different placeholders for words. Abbreviation. I think if you have a problem with abbreviation or slang in general, okay, let's look at it this way. I think Latin is awesome because it's a dead language in the sense that you can't add the word internet to Latin. It can't be done. I like that because then it means that all the definitions that are attached to it are fixed. That's why the traditional Latin mass preserves dogma. But there is something in popular culture, it's a little slang there, pop culture, popular, abbreviation, shorten, If you like pop music, you're saying popular music. There is a necessary quality, I think, and I'm just spitballing here, but I think there's a necessary quality to abbreviation and slang for, necessary, I don't know. Not obviously not for education purposes, but I think for humor, for the lighter part of society, you need language still to be flexible to take on maybe a new attitude towards old experiences, or new attitudes, fresh attitudes towards unprecedented experiences in life. I'm trying to think of an example, but like, for instance, the word, I think it's a sign of the times. Okay, this is maybe a better. I would say slang is not a symptom, but it is kind of like it tells you something about the kind of slang and the words that get slangified. They tell you something about the generation or the times or the people who are using the slang. So, for instance, young people started using sus, and I'm sure it had to do something with that game that came out where you're trying to find the murderer. Basically, it's a phone game. Sus, abbreviated for suspicious. That seems sus, yo. Whoa, why you acting sus, fam? I think that's an interesting, like, I'm not, you can read into it too much, but it's like the generation that thought of it, in my opinion, is probably going to be one of the most skeptical generations in human history. If you think about recent events, the degree to which institutions, processes, governing bodies, all different authoritative figures and structures in the world have been either discredited, scandal-ridden, or like this generation is primed, totally primed for skepticism, radical skepticism. And that is partially not a bad thing. It's partially not a bad thing. It could be pure anarchy, because then no one's following any continuity of there's no handoff between the generations. There's no trust, and there's no, like I said, no continuity. But it's also a good thing in the sense that the degree to which those things were truly not trustworthy, but only deceptively trustworthy, that skepticism is a necessary and honorable response to that level of, corruption or deceit. So I don't think it's any coincidence that like sus is a word that is being used. Mid, very interesting. And I didn't research the cutting edge. I mean, these are already, by the time this video comes out, these will be yesterday's slang. I was just using that to illustrate the fact that like some slang and some abbreviations are not necessarily a degradation of language, because they don't last. So they can't really be the degradation of language, because they are by nature only useful as a popular trend. But at the time that they're popular, I think it tells you something about what the world is either experiencing, or how the world is, how the culture generation using the slang is reacting to things. And I do not think that is altogether unhelpful. I think it's actually probably a very, very useful tool. And older people, the boomer mindset, should not look in judgment upon that, but really just look at that like, if your kid has a very, very like raspy cry, or like your kid is, if your baby is making like, everything should be seen as like an indicator. It's symptomatic indicators for you to look into and be curious about, and wonder like, I wonder why, of all words to get abbreviated, of all things to have their own custom abbreviation, their own shortened language, their own slang, why would sus? Why would mid? Why would no cap? Think about it. No cap is I'm not lying. Now, say less. That is an interesting one, because it means say more, or keep talking, or at least I understand you. No more, enough said. I'm pretty sure it's the same as enough said. Enough said. Say less. Yeah, say less, fam. No cap. Stay mid. No, don't stay mid. Peak. That's really interesting. High key. Low key. High key is an interesting one, right? That's that correlated, groceries to nasties. That's like, it's a very low key party, right? Everyone was fine with low key. And then like the Gen Z group, Gen Alpha, they started saying high key. Man, that's like high key. I enjoy it. I enjoy that. Okay, so you got abbreviations, correlations, slang. I think, and we got kind of sidetracked on the acronyms. I just don't like acronyms. I find acronyms to be like that Tim and Eric video about the universe, where it's like, you can remember the word universe by remembering these 7 letters. And he just starts, or these 7 words. And it's like understandment, Saturn, understandment, Neptune, intelligence. Acronyms are really dumb. in my opinion, because unless the acronym truly does spell something, but if an acronym is just an acronym, like FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI would be FBI would be more memorable, right? If it actually spelled a word. So instead of FBI, you have to remember FBI before you can remember, what those letters stand for. So to me, I'm not so sure it's shortened language, it's slang, but it's one letter each. It's not a pithy new word like mid or, sus. There's nothing creative about it, nothing popular about it. It would be better if the FBI spelled fib, like lie. It'd be like, and I love my life, by the way. I would never do anything to jeopardize my life and my health, no matter how hard life got. I would be in it to win it. But yeah, I mean, acronyms are just, in my opinion, dumb. I don't really have much more other than I think that they're kind of stupid. Unless, like I said, unless the acronym itself spelt something. There's probably plenty examples that I can't even think of. But yeah, FBI would be much better as FIB, Federal Investigation Bureau. Also, you know what I hate about acronyms? You can just sneak in like conjunctions. Conjunction, junction, what's your function? You can just sneak in Federal Bureau of Investigation. What is that? That's not allowed. To me, I think a lot of really sketchy stuff happens with acronyms because they shove in a bunch of conjunctions that are not included in. And then what about the ones where the of or the and is in the acronym? That's really annoying because then you don't know what letters are big words and what letters are just, throwaway letters. It's what I like about the abbreviation better is that the abbreviation requires you to include enough of the original word that the person's mind is triggered to know exactly what the word is. You just need to have the recognition to be able, it gives you the ability to recognize what's being said. Whereas if you say FBI, how would you ever know there's of in there? Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is important stuff. That being said, the official position of Bad Analogies, the Bad Analogies podcast, is that abbreviations are good. You should use them. If you do not like abbreviations, I think the most profound renunciation in the argument against that is that you're just a buzzkill if you don't like abbreviations. You're just a buzzkill. Now, the more superficial one would be that you are not realizing that they are symptomatic and indicative of the political and social mindset of the youth at the time, which should be used as a device in order to get insight into their way of thinking and to realize how they are responding to the environment that they themselves have inherited rather than created, as they are the byproduct of what their parents and the generations before them have provided them. And they are, well, albeit a naive and immature and unrefined reaction to that environment, they are a very, very useful gauge as to what in that environment is standing out as the most prominent and potent influence in their life. Or you're just a buzzkill, okay? If you don't like slang, you're missing an opportunity because 99% of the time, slang is funny. And don't get me wrong, when you hear slang for the first time, there's a reason why. It's literally linguistic fashion. It is linguistic. When you see stuff that's in style for the first time, that's new, that you've not seen, but it's current and it's in style, it looks so dumb. It looks so dumb. Do you remember when joggers got cool? And I mean joggers, I don't mean like sweatpants that are tapered with the elastic at the bottom. I'm talking about jeans. We're talking about jeans here. Khakis, Dockers that were tapered with like elastic scrunchies at the ankle, just above the ankle. Grown men showing their ankles with their capri-like joggers. Do you remember when this came out? This is now like a standard of like athleisure casual style. And when they first came out, you'd be lying. You would be lying if you said, oh yeah, those don't look stupid. You would be a liar. I don't care if now they're cool, and I don't care if now we all agree. That's okay. That's how slang works. But with the first person to decide that was cool, it wasn't cool. It was not cool. Everyone knew that. Everyone was in agreement. I have joggers. Calm down. That's what slang is. Slang is like a kid puts on joggers in his mind, And then he opens his mouth, in the classroom or on the street, and he tries it out. And, man, you either got to be the coolest kid or the funniest kid for people to say, or you just repeat it enough and people mock you with it. They're mocking you ironically by repeating it, saying, oh, is that mid? Hey, Alex, is that mid? And then, but they're saying it now and they're thinking it, and then boom, you've just memed it into existence. And eventually it's post-ironic because everyone says, whoa, all the other people are using it, so I want to fit in, so maybe I'll start saying mid. And then boom, it's in, you're in. It's just verbal fashion. So I'm saying you can stay classic. I'm saying you should stick with a good vocabulary. People dog on a good vocabulary. I think there's also something really sus about people who say all the time, like, oh, you shouldn't use big words, or oh, you use words that people don't understand, then that's alienating. Okay, that's fine. But it wouldn't hurt to read a book. If you read books, do you know that if you read books over time, lots of different books, you pick up a few words and you don't know what they mean, and then you understand, you find out what they mean, and you say, oh, now I know what dichotomy means. Congratulations, you're an adult now, okay? There's a lot of good uses for a lot of good words, and a lot of people don't use them because they don't know them. And you could say, well, yeah, but you should, I have so I'm going on the record here. I'm all for slang, okay? Not all slang, but I mean, I support what it generally functions as in the social environment, the linguistic environment. There's a food chain. Slang is kind of like flies and mosquitoes or it's like things eat those things, and they're a necessary part of the food chain. It's a necessary part of the whole process. But that being said, I also do not like the attitude where people say like, oh, why don't you just use a smaller word for that? It's like, why don't you use a bigger brain? I don't care. I do not care how that clip comes off. I'm saying you need to have both, okay? You need to be able to chill. You need to be able to say, listen, it's all good. Let's use some slang, keep it light. But then there are some times when there is a word that some people are not going to understand, but that's the correct word to use. And while it might make everyone uncomfortable, and I'm really speaking from experience here, while it might make everyone uncomfortable that they don't know that word, if you ask what the word means or you look it up, you'll realize that you didn't know something that was true and that was accurate and that was real. That's not the problem of the speaker. Now, you should always speak in a way to be understood, but I think that there's definitely two views. Oh, slang should never be used. And then two, it's like, oh, people, you shouldn't use a word if people don't understand what it means. How am I supposed to know you don't know what those words mean? I'm speaking personally now. This is me speaking. I assume you're probably educating yourself. I assume you're probably reading books. I don't read a ton of books, but when I read books, I hear a word and I go, oh man, what does that word mean? I have to pause my life, go look up what that word. Guess what? Now I can use the word. My recommendation is that you get out there and you learn words. You learn some slang words. You learn some 4-syllable words. Go learn what dichotomy means. It's a great word. False dichotomy. Here's another beef I have with people who don't like. They want to tell people you shouldn't use words that most people don't know. Have a good vocabulary. You know why? Because if you learn what false dichotomy means, you will have learned a concept that doesn't just oh, I can use this word. I can use this word in this sentence, and it will take away the use for 3 words. There's that benefit too. But if you learn the concept, the idea of false dichotomy, you will realize when somebody's trying to pull the wool over your eyes in an argument by saying, well, if we don't do this, then we'll have to do this. And if we do this, we'll have to do this. And those things have nothing to do with each other. They're not, oh, well, this is opposed to this and this is opposed. No, that's a false dichotomy. You're pitting two things that are actually not contradicting each other against each other in order to sneak something past the gate. That's not just a word like, oh, that's a really big vocabulary word. That's a whole way of thinking about a scenario and being able to articulate it so that you don't get, gaslit into a bad deal. That's a big deal. That whole phrase is a whole mindset. So think about this. Do you know what the word salient means? Someone says, wow, in the middle of a conversation and you're making some points and someone says, wow, I think the most salient thing here, the most salient point. Salient actually means to come to a point. And if I'm not wrong, it also refers to a military formation that is in a sort of a pointed spear formation. Basically meaning like this thing that you said, it cuts through everything. it breaks through. This thing burst forth from all the different things you said. This was the most salient thing. Guess what? That is like, how often, right? How often could you use that now that you know that word? It's just each word, it comes with a whole way of thinking about the things that you are hearing. So if you say, that's a false dichotomy, you're pitting those two things don't negate each other. Right? How was the lecture? How was the huddle? How was the talk at the huddle? How was the presentation by your boss or the president, whatever? You could say the most powerful thing he said was, or the thing I remember most was, but saying the most salient point was, if you know what that word means, you're going to use that 9 times out of 10 in that scenario. You are, because the word comes from a root that is for a specific purpose. And I think that's a big deal. And the funny thing is if you learn a word and like never use it or never use it appropriately, that's fine. I mean, you can just understand it when you hear it. But I categorically reject. Another way of saying that would be I totally reject. I totally reject the idea that, you should use the lowest common denominator of speech. And I know I'm saying that on a day when I'm praising slang. But I think definitions of words actually changes the software of how you see things around you. Let me give one example. High school students, if you've taught high school students anything, if you taught high schoolers, we're talking people who've already gone through 8 years or more of education, and they get into high school. If you just teach them definitions of words, their brains explode, because if you break down a 3-syllable word with the trilateral roots from Latin and Greek, and I'm not saying I'm an expert in trilateral roots. I know like 4 of them. But if you take words seriously and you teach them what the words mean, you can literally see ignorance unraveling in their mind and their brain getting more ordered. And you say, do you know what I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay, let's say love, okay? Let's go there. Let's go, full throttle with it. If you teach high schoolers, there's 4 different Greek words for love, but that the definition of love is to will the good of the other. Think about the way the word love is thrown around. And we'll have another day on proper analogy and improper analogy, and Aquinas on, I love this ice cream, I love this person, I love God. But still, if you teach young people what a word means, rather than just what the right time of day and sentence is to use that word, and people will kind of catch your vibe, that literally is education. Teaching people words is that's basically all education is. So if you teach somebody what a color revolution is, if you teach somebody what a psyop is, that's slang for psychological operation. If you teach somebody what a false flag attack is, if you teach somebody what controlled opposition is, if you teach somebody the word arbitrage, that's a cool word. Triage. Oh my gosh, what an amazing word. The second you learn what triage means, you will use it every single time you have the chance, because of how all-encompassing, how well it fits into a situation. You could almost say that words themselves are slang for ideas that contain a whole idea, especially when you think about how words can have 3 definitions, or at least 3 relative synonymous meanings. That word then is packed with all of these different things. So, long story short, if you're on this side where you're like, oh, the kids don't even speak English these days anymore, Dale. The kids aren't even speak properly. And by the way, that's a phase. That's going to go away. You can't use slang in professional adult life and be taken seriously. So don't worry about it. Just relax. Okay, so slang. And then we didn't even get into like cursing, cussing, and profanity. So you see, it just gives you, it's a nice, even the rule of comedy where it's like 1, 2, 3, right? Cursing, cussing, profanity. That's 3s are much better, right? So the smaller vocabulary I have, let me speak English properly. The smaller vocabulary that you have, the less likely you'll be able to nail an awesome trifecta list of something. So is it difficult? Is it hard? Is it challenging? So if you're on this end, you're like, oh, slang is the destruction of language. And on the other end, oh, like big words are like dumb, man. Why do you use words nobody understands, man? Read a book. There's a lot of words out there that you can just learn. So don't judge the kid for using slang. that kid is revealing the climate to you. That's like an outdoor wind chime or a thermostat outside. You just read that and see what that's telling you. And then over here, read a book, and if someone says a word that you don't understand, you have a defect. That person might be an arrogant jerk and, pompous, but that still means they know something that you don't, and that it wouldn't really bother you if you just picked up a book and learned that word. If you knew that word, would you still judge the person? So then, and if not, like if I said that's a really salient point, thanks for sharing, thanks for speaking today. The most salient point was this, and you just knew what that was, we'd be communicating. And then you would not even think about it. You wouldn't judge that person as like, oh, I don't like that they use a word I don't know. So think about it. I'm just saying, just be able to rock both ways. They'll say, okay, I'm not trying to be ostentatious. I'm not trying to be ostentatious with my vocab. I'm just trying to, I don't want to be mid with my vocab. I want to be peak. I want to be high key. I want people to be like, he's low key smart, but he's high key cool. Do you know what I'm saying? You want people to be like, that guy his talk was straight bussin', no cap, fam. That is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Instead of, he made a really salient point, it's, man, that was a salient point. Dude, that was straight, that point was straight saily, bro. Dude, no false dichot, dude. That was straight saily, bro. That point was saily. Yeah. So, all good things to think about. Thank you for joining us here at Bad Analogies. We hope that this is helping you think through your attitudes towards language, because language is it. Language, logos is the whole game. It's not the whole game, but it's a big factor. It's a big factor. Next episode we're going to talk about language. Next episode is going to be about the mother tongue. It's going to be about the native language. It's going to be about the language that you first learned and the impact that can make when dealing with people. So we hope you stick around for that video. This has been Bad Analogies. We'll catch you on the next one.